The pandemic and the introduction of the NEP together have re-emphasized the need to integrate technology as an additional dimension in the higher education ecosystem, especially to deal with the unexpected challenges caused as a result of COVID-19. In the upcoming panel discussion, our panel of experts will discuss and deliberate the transforming higher education. I would like to invite Mr. Arpit Gupta, Assistant Editor, ET Government, to moderate this discussion. Over to you, Arpit.
Dear viewers and ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the panel discussion Transforming Higher Education. India's education system is one of the largest in the world, with more than 1.5 million educational institutions, 8.5 million teachers, and 250 million children from varying socio-economic backgrounds. India today has over 1,000 higher educational institutions, including over 150 of national importance. Approx 2 lakh students travel abroad every year for higher education, resulting in an outflow of almost 50,000 crore rupees every year. The COVID-19 pandemic has fundamentally challenged the landscape of higher education across the globe. It has reinforced a technological shift in higher education for the continuity of learning and teaching in a blended or hybrid mode, as well as to conduct online examinations, assignments, and evolutions. Universities and higher education institutions are preparing digital curriculum, repositories, and focusing more on digital infrastructure and platforms to realize the full potential of the National Education Policy NEP 2020. On behalf of ED Government, I welcome our esteemed panelists. It is indeed a great pleasure to meet you and have you in today's panel discussion, Transforming Higher Education. I am joined by eminent leaders. I welcome Professor Anil D. Sahasrabudhe, Chairman, All India Council for Technical Education, AICTE. Welcome, sir.
Namaskar.
I welcome Dr. Manju Singh, Joint Secretary, University Grants Commission, UGC. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you.
I also welcome Professor Vijay Kumar Shukla, Officiating Vice Chancellor, Banaras Hindu University, Varanasi. Welcome, Professor Shukla. I welcome Ms. Kirti Seth, Chief Executive Officer of ITES Sector Skill Council, NASSCOM. Welcome, Ms. Seth.
Thank you.
And I'm also joined by Mr. Arun Pandey, Higher Education Industry Lead, Microsoft India. Welcome, Mr. Pandey.
Thank you.
So let me begin the conversation by asking first question to Professor Sahasrabudhe. Sir, how is the rapid shift to digital and hybrid mode of education shaping the future of higher education and ensuring equitable use of technology? Over to you.
Arpit, this pandemic has really accelerated the whole process. If you look at the use of technology, especially internet-based education, whether you call it through YouTube, through MOOC, they were all existing for more than 2 decades. It's the late 90s that all of this started. In the early 21st century, everything was available. But we were not using it as effectively as we are using today because of the pandemic. We have no choice but to move on to digital sort of education. So we have already moved on. And therefore, whether it is examinations, conduct of classes, even internships, Kirti and we were together in Microsoft program where not just 2,000, several thousands of students are going to be given internship, all on a virtual mode. And many other companies are joining the bandwagon. So I think this has come to stay. However, when pandemic is over, we will certainly go back to our classes. I was saying that the blended mode of education is going to come and stay here. And so how effectively will we use that is the innovation that each institution has to make. So I always constantly give an example of mixed fruit juice. It depends on what concentration, which juice you want. It depends on you have more apple or more oranges or more mango, and then you get a blend. So I think a similar blend, I don't want to use other blend. This blend is a more important blend, where in education we can have some classes in online mode, some classes in the face-to-face mode, some internship, some problem solving. I think that is what is going to stay, and that is what reimagining education is all about. And thanks to Economic Times for organizing this event.
Thank you, Professor Sahasrabuddin. Now I'll jump to the other panelist of this panel discussion. Dr. Manju Singh, how do you see the penetration of digital and adoption of ICT by state governments and central universities to transform higher education?
Thank you. Yes, see, in the last decades, Indian higher education system has grown in scope, in scale, and in speed. Now, the fourth industrial revolution has fundamentally altered the way we live, work, and relate to one another. The internet has truly revolutionized how knowledge is communicated. But the importance of digital penetration and ICT in education has never been realized as we have realized now. The COVID-19 pandemic has forced the education sector to embrace virtual and blended modes of teaching to ensure uninterrupted learning for our students. Information and communication technology has helped in adapting to new ways of online learning. Both the central government and the state governments have responded very quickly as required, and higher education institutions across the country played their part in this forced change in our education system. Digital penetration and ICT is not all about online teaching, but for sure, the digital penetration and the use of ICT, which was earlier limited to few institutions, has now been introduced to the entire education system of India. The crisis has also allowed various educational innovators to bloom. Stimulation of innovation has led to a monumental rise in adopting widespread use of online tools like Zoom, Google, Classroom, Blackboard, mobile applications to facilitate communication with learners. In the coming days, the possibility of billions of people connecting by mobile devices with unprecedented access to knowledge will be multiplied by emerging technology breakthrough in the field of artificial intelligence, robotics, Internet of Things, autonomous vehicles, 3D printing, nanotechnology, cloud computing, and so on and so forth. We are still coming to terms with how it unfolds. But one thing is clear, the response must be integrated and covering all stakeholders, whether central government or state governments or the higher education institutions. Finally, we are yet to achieve the desired level of ICT adoption or digital transformation in higher education in our country. With digitalization, there is technology-induced skill gap. We must transform our course curriculum, our pedagogy, teaching methods to be more relevant amidst the technological advancements. While technology can influence the way how students are taught, it would also enable the development of collaborative skills as well as knowledge creation skills. ICT-enabled education can be diversified, flexible, adaptive, and relevant to the changing needs of the globe. So to say, the ICT-enabled innovations have never failed to gain traction, and with the Industry 5.0 advancing, the interaction between human and machine, the transformative solutions for higher education too will play its part in transforming higher education.
Thank you. Moving next, I'll go to VC of Banaras Hindu University. Sir, BHU is considered to be the lighthouse of India in terms of technology and innovation in education. What are some of major roadblocks you foresee in India's higher education digital transformation journey, and how can this be overcome?
Thank you. I think I fully agree with what Professor Sahasrabuddin has mentioned, that this COVID pandemic, this has come as a blessing, the use of technology in teaching and training and learning. And what BHU has done is that we have installed about 100 smart classrooms in the faculties and the departments. We have facilitated the campus and we have created the Wi-Fi campus. The LAN network has been extended to make the internet availability hassle-free. We have also initiated the training of the faculty members for making optimum use of technology for teaching and learning. We have encouraged faculty members to utilize the technology for imparting teaching in their respective fields. We have promoted online courses on various platforms like MOOCs and SWAYAM. The challenges which we have come across and what feedback we got from the students and the faculty is that digital divide. Only 42% of people in India have access to internet. So we need to make technology available to all. Two, availability of right infrastructure, which is again, not all the students have the smartphones where they can use the WhatsApp and internet, and they can connect to the online class. Training and facilitating teachers to adopt new technologies and to find the right mix of blended and flipped learning environment for students. What we have noticed that senior faculty members, they are hesitant to use the technology. So it becomes difficult at times to motivate and make them interested in it. So what we did was to attach one young faculty members with them to help them and motivate them to take up this technology, because it is there to stay now, and we have to be in online mode, and it has so much changed that most of the teachers now prefer to be online, and even the students, they want that, okay, we want to online. We have started the final year classes offline also, but they prefer in hybrid mode. Some attend in the classrooms and some majority on online. So it is a boon to us, and I think it has gained a lot of changes. In fact, we have made about 400 art selections online into. So this is all the advantages of the technology. But as you rightly asked the question, that what are the bottlenecks and how we can improve upon it. The main is the availability, round the clock availability of the internet facility, and these mobile sets for the students, because majority of these students who come from these eastern UP and Bihar, they don't have these smart mobiles, and at times they are in such a remote area that they are not able to connect. So we advise them to, if they are nearby to their friends, they should contact them, and we requested them to mail or WhatsApp the teaching materials to them, and then we have uploaded the lectures on the website as well as through YouTube. Then there was a problem in the COVID period. What about the practicals? In science, they can't do anything about the practicals. So I requested them to record them, put as videos or in YouTube, and that has made a lot of difference to practical classes also. So what they used to train in 3 months, maybe it can be done in 4 weeks or 6 weeks. So these are the advantages and the problems which we are facing. But I think the online teaching is now there to stay, and I'm not surprised that it will help us and make us global, because BHU being the IOE, Institute of Eminence, we need to have the foreign faculties and foreign students. So now we are initiating online courses so that we can enroll the foreign students, and foreign faculty also, they can contribute by joining online. So these are the various advantages. And for India, the basic problem is the infrastructure and the smart mobile phones for the students. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing these real challenging problems. Now let me go to Ms. Kirti Seth. Ma'am, there is a huge gap of knowledge and skills in rural, semi-urban and urban-based university systems. Do you think that NEP will bring a paradigm shift in the country's higher education system?
So I think if we read the NEP in its totality, it's truly a transformational vision for what education in India will look like. Now, if we look at the gap between what's happening in rural, semi-urban and urban areas, there are many reasons why the gap exists. One of them that Professor Shukla has talked about is just the sheer availability of infrastructure. But there is also things like the opportunities that are available, the faculty that wants to be there or live there. So that, there are many reasons why this gap exists. So the NEP has addressed some of these issues, but I think the perfect storm that we are in right now is where NEP combines with this whole technology tsunami that is hitting education today. And Professor Sahasrabudhe and Dr. Manju referred to it, saying that we have now entire education opening up to technology. And this is combined with things like what is happening in the workplace. Remote work is coming up, hybrid workplaces, the ability of institutions to leverage online courses. Professor Shukla talked about foreign faculty coming in, but here it could be just even local faculty teaching students in tier 2, tier 3 towns and cities. The other thing that's happening is the willingness of companies to look for an alternate talent pool, Today, 3 years ago, there was a big fear that technology will come and take away all kinds of jobs, and what's going to happen. This man-machine interface is going to just take over. Robots will take over the earth. But none of that is happening. Actually, the demand for talent is far outstripping supply. And we published many reports at NASSCOM calling out how this gap in demand and supply is only set to grow. So when we look at this demand supply gap and we look at the employer group that is now looking to see how can we get more and more people into the workforce with remote working, we see that this gap is set to narrow, because now through remote, through hybrid learning, through blended learning, we can reach these towns and cities where perhaps quality faculty and quality content was not available. But today, none of that is a problem. It's become very democratized. Another big change that will come, and I think I already see it happening. I was at a session at IIT Madras the other day, and they're doing some continuous education with people who are looking for changing their career path, and there they are doing courses in Python in 4 regional languages. So this emphasis that NEP is pushing to make technical education also available in regional languages is going to again be quite a game changer. We may say that today it is, it's just beginning, but doesn't matter. It's a big start. And as soon as people start picking it up, it's going to really bridge the gap a lot. And with technology tools that are coming to translate technology content, it's going to become much faster. We don't have to have years and years spent in translating content. Along with that, the other big thing that needs to happen is faculty training. Another session I was in, actually I wasn't in, but I was reading about, was Professor Jalote and AICT have just launched a faculty training program that is going to use the blended learning model. Now, if this blended learning model is available, it doesn't matter where you are. So you could be in a rural area, you could be in a semi-urban area, you could be in the city. It's all the same. So the quality is available to you, and it's self-paced combined with blended learning. So you can pick up any course that you desire. So with all these digital resources that are available, the other thing that's happening is awareness in these rural and semi-urban areas of all the opportunities that are available. We at NASSCOM are constantly conducting seminars, and the attendance we have is from all over the place. So if people see these opportunities coming up and see that all these alternate talent pools, remote working, hybrid working options are available, it suddenly creates this motivation to come forward and say, I can learn too, I can pursue my dream too. So I think all these elements of the new education policy are definitely going to make an impact. It's not going to happen tomorrow, but that's okay. The change has started.
Very well pointed out. And when we are talking about the accessibility and language barriers, here comes the role of private sector. So let me go to Mr. Pandey from Microsoft. Sir, what role can Microsoft play in the experiential learning in higher education and also addressing the language accessibility barriers when it comes to technology?
So I think there are, during the panel discussion, there are 2 points which has been called out by each of the panelists. One is around that how we can provide a better learning environment to the student, which include not only the classes, but also providing the lab experience to the student, because ultimately having a hands-on experience will give them a better understanding of the subject. And the second part which has been called out by Kirti ma'am and Professor Anil Sahasrabudhe around the language barriers. So there are 2 tools which Microsoft have built considering these things in mind, and this has been also called out very categorically in the NEP 2020, where the major focus is on the experiential learning, where rather than providing a classroom environment, the NEP focus around that how we can give a better environment to the student to create their own stuff, which comes from their own thinking, right? So the first solution which I can talk about is a cloud-based lab solution, which I think is a good proposition while we consider the current environment, because it will give the flexibility to all the students to use the environment whenever they want, right? It will also give them a freedom to work as per their availability, as per the resources which has been provided to them. It will also help them to basically secure the environment, because all the things which all the solutions which has been provided is on Microsoft Cloud, which is completely secured, all certification from the certification part of view, as well as from the Government of India directive. So all the research, all the application which has been created by the student, all the labs work which has been created by the student is absolutely secure from their working point of view. The second important thing which is around the providing the content to the students in their local language or the native language. Microsoft has built few tools which can help them to create the content in the local language. I think we are currently supporting around 11 Indian languages, which includes document translation. There are languages which has been called out in the NEP and part of vernacular as well. We have also created a tool which can help to create a video content into different languages. It might be audio to text or audio to audio. Even we have also created a tool which can basically help the student to create the content into translation tool. Translation is generally we call it into local language called English, right? So it is basically a technical term is translation, which can actually convert the text text into Indian English language, creating the same stuff. We have also created few tools which can even reduce the workload of the faculties, which is kind of creation of a artificial intelligence enabled Q&A maker, which can actually use the content from the subject and create a pool of the questions and as well as the answers, which can help the faculties to better questions to the student while they are evaluating the student. And if we look at all these tools are inbuilt with all the sentiment analysis, bilingual conversations. If somebody is talking half English, half Hindi, all these things have been well covered. It can also cover the features like if I am talking and somebody taken over from me, it can also just that the speaker has been changed while during the discussion. All these things are well taken care, and all these tools have been provided since I already mentioned this has been provided from Microsoft India Data Center. So all the government guidelines and everything is very well covered into this.
Thank you, Mr. Pandey. And let me again go back to Professor Sahasrabudhe, sir. Initiatives of AICTE to translate content to Indian regional languages is a path-breaking initiative. What are major challenges faced by institutions and professors in current times in adopting technology to transform higher education?
So Arun was telling about the tools which are available for creating content in Indian languages. Vernacular languages is very important. This is what is going to empower New India, because they are coming from all variety of regions from different parts of the country, and they need to be empowered. AICTE on its part has also developed its own AI-based translation tool, and it is having one more specialty beyond what Arun was telling, that if there is a book which is there in English, it is formatted and you have some pictures, you have some tables, you have some equations, and it is also having different fonts used there. So the tool we uses exactly the same replica of that in different languages. So your figure also comes and locates in the same location as what it is there in the English. And that will be very helpful in creating a textbook from English into any Indian languages. And we have covered now 12 languages, including Urdu. So I think that is what it has been possible to make accessible education to people who are not knowing English. Those who are not finding it comfortable in English, they can now start learning this. This is one part which is very, very significant and important. You talked about the adoption of technology. This is where I think we are really innovative. Right from primary school teachers, nursery teachers to nursery students to the university college teachers. Although Professor Shukla did mention that some of the senior faculty were not less, savvy about tech, and therefore they had to be prompted to do that with a younger faculty. But nevertheless, across the spectrum, we have certainly adopted the technology, so there's not a big problem. The real problem exists, as pointed out by everyone, that the government now needs to establish absolutely good connectivity in all nooks and corners of the country. Like we have electricity provided to all villages of the country, which is a phenomenon which happened 2 years ago. We should be able to claim in the next 1 year that you name a remotest possible village in the mountains or in the snow, we have an internet capacity that's there. I think that is what will make education accessible, available to anyone. And all that talk about divide, etc., rural, urban, it will all vanish. Because if something can create a level playing field, it is the technology which can do it at a much lower cost. And therefore, I think we should not worry about that. The part which we have to still worry about is some of the teachers will continue to teach in a manner that they were teaching in the classroom, which is not going to be very successful because students have to be gravitated towards the screen. And we are already seeing what we know as cyber fatigue or internet fatigue, you call it. And therefore, how we make everything interesting. And that is very, very important. Even in a normal classroom, a class has to be interesting. Otherwise, students' attention is not going to be drawn by the teacher. And it is all the more important in an online mode. And that's why what kind of things, how interactions have to be done, I think that kind of training is what is required. And AICT has taken upon itself to start training faculty in use of technology and how do you conduct such classes. And that will really be an empowering moment.
Right, sir. Technology without digital infrastructure is of no use. So my next question to Dr. Manju Singh is around the same topic. Ma'am, the national education policy is likely to transform the landscape of higher education in India. Do you feel that creating a digital infrastructure and using technology is the roadmap, the only roadmap to transform Indian education system?
Well, I was saying that the government of India brought about the National Education Policy 2020, which is the first in the 21st century, and it provides for comprehensive transformation of the education system. The NEP, among others, envisions multidisciplinary and holistic education, integration of higher education system, and internationalization of higher education that contributes directly to transforming our nation sustainably into an equitable and vibrant knowledge society by providing high quality education to all. One of the core areas of focus in the NEP is technology use and integration in the education system. In this direction, the Honorable Prime Minister has launched the National Digital Education Architecture and National Education Technology Forum, NETF, on 29th July 2021 to provide a digital and a technological framework to the entire country. This National Education Technology Forum is a platform for free exchange of ideas on the use of technology to enhance learning, assessment, planning, and administration. The National Digital Library is also a digital repository of academic content, which has brought together more than 2.5 crore digital learning resources, and this is all made available free of cost. Another focus is on facilitating the integration of technology, including disruptive technology in academics, and for effective educational administration, development of e-content, and distribution of equipment to integrate the e-content, then robust learning management system with open source technology to reach out to the academic community, and setting up of virtual labs. Virtual universities are aimed also towards strengthening the digitalization of higher education. I'm sure the NETF and the measures on digitalization and the implementation of other provisions of NEP will become a watershed in the quality of education, apart from reaching the unreached. Now, coming to the second part of the question, I see digitalization as a means rather than an end by itself. The use of ICT can make sense if opportunities can be maximized and the risks minimized in contributing to the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goal 4 to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and to promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. So what we need is ICT assisted, ICT enabled, ICT empowered solutions to build resilience of our education system. In a sense, digitalization in itself is not transformation. Digitalization to bring forth a quantum jump in quality of education is transformation.
Very well said. Now let me go to Professor Sukla sir. How to enhance faculty and student engagement with the use of technology to transform India's higher education ecosystem?
Good question. As I had already mentioned earlier also, and it has been mentioned by Manjuji and Professor Budre also, that we have to make sure, like electricity, the internet supply 24/7 and the strong signals, and the availability of the other equipments which is needed to promote this. And then we have to have this blended training programs for teachers as well as the taught. And what other point which we have come to notice and the students have been complaining is that the lack of this feel of offline face-to-face teaching. That is where the blended training is very important, because down the line, because suddenly you withdraw the face-to-face teaching and put everything online, so the students are not very comfortable. Though, as I said, we have started the offline classes, but majority students, they are happy in attending online. They don't come to the classes, only few come to the classes. So what is important is the facility, that is the 24/7 internet facility, and then the equipment like the smart phones. Those the students who are coming from a BPL class, they need the support. And then the as I said, the hesitancy from the senior faculty members, they need to be motivated and trained for the blended teaching mode. And then we have to encourage, this is another problem which I faced during this COVID period, was they were teaching, but they were not very keen in uploading the material, teaching material, either on the website or YouTube or WhatsApp or what other forms. So again, the same problem that the lecture is so big, is very difficult, is not possible, and the signal is not strong, so we are not able to connect and deliver. So then we created a page for every teacher that you upload in your page and let it be there. So we are trying to push, but still there is a hesitancy. And if you say I could manage only 50 to 60% faculty to upload, I still 30 to 48 to be motivated to do that. So these are certain issues which need to be solved. And I'm sure, as Manjuji has rightly mentioned, this technology is here to stay, and this is not the end. And this is going to supplement and improve the higher education and make it easier for the teacher and the taught both to achieve their goals in a better way. Thank you.
Technology is becoming sector agnostic and impacting every job role, and digital is the way forward. So let me go to Ms. Seth. Your thoughts on upskilling knowledge and align it with futuristic skill courses to match the current industry standards.
So, it's very interesting that we are asking this question on futuristic courses being matched to industry standards, because if you look at what I do, I head the Sector Skills Council for ITES, with IT-enabled services. And our job is to set the standards, and anyone who knows what is the process of setting jobs and competency standards, they know that it's all done in consultation with industry representatives. It's a very extensive process where people from 20 companies for each of these technologies or big, chunks of whichever category of job roles that we are talking about, they are invited. It's a consultative process where they put together, they define what the job roles are, what the skills are, and what the performance criteria, how to measure that, whether these competencies are actually being developed. So we have this framework that is available, and it's only, I think it's up to people to use it. Maybe we have also not done enough to educate people on the wealth of resources that are available absolutely for free. It is available on the internet. And whenever we have shown people that this framework exists, it's actually surprising to them, because it's a wonderful way for academia and industry to come on the same page on how to talk about skills and how to measure what is being taught. The other point about making technology sector agnostic, well, I would use a different word. I would say that I would just say that technology is not limited to the IT industry anymore. And each sector is going to leverage technology in a different way. So how automotive is going to think about technology and leverage it, or how retail is going to do it, or how agri is going to do it, is going to be very different. But the key will be in figuring out this structure so that we don't have to keep reinventing the wheel, to say that how do we do this, what we call multi-skilling. This is a terminology that has been created by the National Council of Vocational Education Training. This is the new regulatory body used, for skill development. And they are trying to create this framework where standards from one sector can be leveraged by another. The whole idea is that don't reinvent something that has already been created. Find a way to make this modular structure. I think that is something we had also proposed, and a lot of other sector skills councils have proposed, that currently the way our framework is designed is at a job role level, and job roles are very extensive. So making them making them relevant across sectors becomes very difficult, because we are doing job roles for the IT sector, but there are so many aspects of those job roles that are relevant to other sectors. So we have to look at a modular approach. So NCVT has heard us, and they're trying to build that out to say, how do we look at competency-based certifications rather than job role-based? And so even learning needs to be designed in a way where we have principles of technology, which are then dovetailed with the knowledge of domain. Each is equally important. You cannot think of somebody who's working in who's building an autonomous car, doesn't understand how cars work, but knows about big data and computer vision. So you can't really look at them in isolation. Both have to work together. But having said all that, I mean, there has been lots of studies on how technology is going to become ubiquitous across all sectors. The World Economic Forum did a study where they said that technologies like cloud and cybersecurity have seen a surge in adoption even in the last 1 year. So where more than 80% of the companies now are going to be using, 80% of the companies across sectors are going to be using technologies like cloud and cybersecurity. Other popular technologies are like IoT and connected devices and big data. Those are already very, very high. So over the last 1 year, we haven't seen such a surge in growth as we saw in cloud and cybersecurity. We see sectors, I mean, if we again look at the data, what is it saying? That maximum tech adoption, of course, is going to come in digital communication and information technology, but education, financial services, transportation are all going to be industries where technology's adoption is going to be huge. And things like government, healthcare, consumer goods are going to follow close behind. I mean, we just published a report on India's public digital platforms, and it's very proud. I mean, you see that report and it just makes you feel really proud about what we're doing in India. When you see platforms like Aadhaar, you see like UPI, you see the CoWIN application, you see now what the National Digital Health Mission is doing. When you see this kind of technology adoption coming to the grassroots, yes, technology is going to be leveraged everywhere. So I wouldn't use the word agnostic. I would just say completely necessary, and a necessary condition now, as far as other industries go.
Let me go to Mr. Pandey now. Mr. Pandey, how can one Microsoft help in achieving the desired growth as laid out in the NEP 2020 for the higher education space?
Yeah, thank you. So I think very rightly pointed out by Dr. Manju from the Prime Minister's speech on 29th of July, where he has laid the foundation for the National Digital Architecture along with NECF. While Microsoft looks at the higher education scenarios and from the learning which we have, we typically see that there are 4 or 5 areas where student and the faculties have to be part of, so that we can create the entire transformation journey for that institution, right? We can look at the scenarios like having a secured learning platform, and I think Dr. Shukla has very rightly pointed out that faculties are hesitant in uploading their content which has been created by them. Security might be a concern for them that the research or the work they have done might not be leaked or might not be used by any other resources, right? We are also thinking that how we can give a better environment to the student, because ultimately students are also very if their data they're very discomfortable if their data is out, right? So we can also look at that, how we can secure the student data, how we can secure the research which has been created within the institution, so that the institution overall transformation of the institution will be there. So while thinking of all these things, we think there are four factors which we can think while creating the entire digital transformation from a higher education standpoint. The first one, how we can create a student success environment to the institution, which also includes from the day the student gets an admission into the institution and till the day he get alumni from that institution. Everything from the data standpoint, from all the connections which he has created, all the work which he did during his graduation or post graduation shall be secured for the life, right? Second part is the teaching and learning outcomes. There are multiple tools which Microsoft has created, including Microsoft Teams, as well as the other Microsoft ecosystem integration with the learning partners, which include the overall environment to the education institute to create a learning environment to the institution. Third is which is a very important factor while it comes to the technical education, which is the research work, right? There are multiple research work happening at the technical education related how we can create or give a secured environment to the researchers so that they can freely work on their without considering around any limitation on the infrastructure, how they can work freely to create on their research, right? And fourth one is around the security, that how we can secure the entire campus from the external hackers as well as from the internal misuse of the data. So if we look at all four pillars, it is the entire Microsoft view on the higher education side, that how we can look at the transformation into the higher education space.
Right, Mr. Pandey. While all the panelists have underlined the challenges and opportunities to transform higher education, let me also take the last input by all the panelists on the future roadmap. So I'll go to Professor Sahasrabuddhe, sir. Where do you see the role of emerging technologies like artificial intelligence, cloud, smart boards, devices, and classrooms to enhance the learning experience? And what should be the future roadmap to transform higher education of India?
So the technologies which you mentioned, all emerging technologies, be it AI, IoT, machine learning, deep learning, robotics, 3D printing, blockchain, augmented reality, virtual reality, they are going to be there and they will stay. And their applications in all other roles, in terms of whether it is in education, AI will play a big role. The learning of student at this juncture and how his journey in the future can be taken forward. This will be decided by AI and IoT. Similarly, we can have applications in healthcare, transportation, agriculture, all of them. And therefore, these technologies will remain and more technologies will emerge. So learning to learn will become more significant and important. What I learned in the university or college is not good enough. There is an expiry life for drugs and medicine. So there is an expiry for our degrees. This is what we have to understand. And therefore, constant lifelong learning becomes the order of the day. Today we had a webinar. In fact, just before coming here an hour back, there is a student called Dipanshu Parshar. He is a young student, just completed his 12th grade. He has still not joined engineering, but he is an excellent person in cyber security. Can you imagine? He has written 2 textbooks on cyber security, and he gave a webinar for about 1.5 hours. Even faculty with 25 years experience cannot match him, I'm telling you. So this is the power of technology. All of that he has learned. He has got certified as a certified ethical hacker, web app pen tester. You have defense security certified professional. Many of the professionals in your organizations may not have that. So he has done it before 18. I think that is what is going to be the future. So we should be all welcoming these people on board.
Dr. Manju Singh, your inputs.
See, the adoption of digital and ICT in education is a must, and we can't live without it. But I would like to point out few aspects where our future we should focus on these adoption of technology, especially in the area only in the area of education. One would be, the capacity building of faculty with hands-on training on the adoption of the digital initiatives and the associated pedagogy. This is important. Then we should also focus on to improve the competitiveness among the students, the faculty, and the institutions on using the digital avenues. This must also be incentivized through the reflection in awards and rankings. Then another focus could be, to create a culture of data-driven decision making. This includes adopting a digital mindset across all areas of campus for the students, for the faculty, for leadership, and even for other staff members. Then classroom learning through augmented reality and virtual reality. These technologies can put architect students right in the middle of a construction site, or bring medical students not just inside the hospital, but sometimes even inside the human body. Then blockchain technology, as has been mentioned earlier, it also can be used in the field of education for automatically recording and verifying transactions, and that it can operate through a decentralized platform which will help in verifying the academic credentials, sharing the students' records, secure infrastructure networks from hackers, and access employment and even criminal records. So these could be few areas, of focus, and we should gainfully utilize the adoption of the digital technology in all areas, but definitely in education, because education leads to everything else. Thank you.
Thank you. Professor Shukla, your inputs?
Yes, I fully agree with Professor Sas Budre and Manjuji. Manjuji has rightly mentioned, and if I fully agree that faculty building is very important if you really want to take advantage and take it forward. And as she has mentioned about the medical education, I must tell you, I being a surgeon, so I can tell you that how these skills have been developed, and in this era of consumer forum, these you can't allow the residents, the new doctors, to handle the patients, operate, do the major procedures. So we have the simulation lab where they sit like in aviation, and they have the feel of the organ, the surgery. If they cut the artery, if there's a bleeding, they can see, simulate the bleeding, and they try to control it, and the end of the procedure, it gives you the score. So it is a great help, and as I said, during the COVID pandemic, now it was a big issue, because our hospital was converted into a COVID hospital. Now the MCI said you have to take the exams for the final year students. How to take? Where are the patients? So the patients were simulated. So the technology has really changed the whole world, and it is going to change. And I'm sure you guys must be aware that sitting in America, you operate a patient in France. It is technology. Only thing is there's a delay in communication, but this is what is happening in marine. It's somebody traveling in a ship and there is some problem, you need surgery. Robotic surgery can be done. So technology has played a tremendous role, and but it has got issues with it also, as has rightly been mentioned by Sas Budre and Manjuji. Cyber crime and cyber issues are the big issues, and I am happy to note that the quite young chaps, as Professor Sas Budre has mentioned, this 18-year boy, talking about the cyber crime and all. So they are keen, and now they are adopting cyber law and cyber as their specialty and going for it. So I think there's a lot of promise with the technology. And again, AI has a great role to play even in the health, because you can use the AI for the diagnosis. You can use the come to a conclusion, if you are in doubt. Because earlier, we used to tell and teach to our students that there's no substitute to the experience. If I have a gray hair, I'm more experienced, and if I say something, even if the investigation doesn't show it, but they take it as final that what I have said is the right thing. And at times, you do see that what you thought was right and what you saw in the investigation was wrong. So this is another problem with the technology, that more investigative we are becoming and less of clinical acumen. So there are disadvantages, but again, having said that, it has to be blended both. We take the advantage of the technology as well as the clinical acumen, and then we use these simulations for training. So this is going to go a long way in capacity building and in teaching and training our students, motivating them for research. And this is going to get, what Modi ji has been trying, Atmanirbhar Bharat, Vishwa Guru and the global leader. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Shukla. Now let me take the final remarks by Ms. Kirti Seth. Over to you.
So I am going to take a little bit of a different tack. I know we've talked about technology, and I think that's a par for the course. Technology is here to stay. It is now part of our lives, and none of us can imagine existing without technology. So there is no way that education is not going to completely internalize it, adopt it, and thrive on it. But the bigger concern going forward for us is going to be the human skills that are going to be required to deal with this technology. So while we are talking about all AI, big data, robotics, but somewhere along the way, we have to have people who can tell that story, who can say, how is this technology relevant to you? What is it? How do you communicate with each other? How do you communicate this solution or communicate the problem? Things like problem solving. What are you using technology for? We can say technology will solve everything, but if we define the problem wrong, we will not only end up with a bad solution, we may end up with a ethically worse solution. So even ethics becomes a real problem here. So how do we build this within our students? And this is not something that is an injection we can inoculate in, in semester 6, we will do a class on ethics and communication and all will be solved. It's not going to happen. It needs to actually start in school. It needs to start very early. The whole, I know the new education policy talking about, again, they talk about skills and vocational skills starting from class 6. Now, it's not because of the certification. It is to build that mindset. It is to build that creative, that problem solving mindset, because eventually the superiority of your solutions and the innovation that you bring to the table is all going to be dependent on how you think. So what are we doing in our education system? While we leverage technology, we should also leverage it to bring this out in our students, change the pedagogy with which we are running. And I think Professor Sahasrabudhe has said it time and again in whichever speech he gives. He talks about this, that we can't make classrooms boring. We have to hold students, hold their attention. Naturally, they have the world's best content in front of them. So content is no longer the king, because content is free, it's ubiquitous, it's available everywhere. But how do you leverage it? How do you create a solution with it? How do you become special? That is what will make India Atmanirbhar. So that's what I think when we talk about the road ahead. As we talk about technology, we must equally talk about building these skills of communication, collaboration, storytelling, problem solving, creativity, because that's where greatness will come from.
Thank you. And let me now take the final and concluding remarks by Mr. Arun Pandey. Your thoughts?
I think there are few takeaways from the learning from everybody here. I think the key pillars around the education transformation is artificial intelligence, AR, VR, simulation-based labs, machine learning, and the most important is the cyber security, because data is the important for all of us, and we don't want that our personal data will go out, right? As a technology company, Microsoft believes that we provide the best teaching and learning out resources and the platform to the students as well as the faculty, so that they can create their own thinking on the top of that. For example, we are multiple times we spoke about the AI based models, right? So Microsoft cloud platform has a lot of modeling done, which is kind of a platform for all the students. Those platforms are very well available for all of them, and they can create their own models on the top of that. So from the contribution side from Microsoft, the platforms are available, the models on which they wanted to build their own thinking are available. And the important point which Kirti ma'am said around the problem solving, those things are also very well covered when we talk about the models which has been created by Microsoft, which is not only into the education space, but Microsoft also created the models into the healthcare as well as the transportation and the other future areas of the.
Thank you, Mr. Pandey. So what I feel going forward, technology is the future, and ICT tools are necessary to ensure continuity of learning and teaching learning process. The pandemic and the introduction of the NEP together have re-emphasized the need to integrate technology as an additional dimension in the higher education ecosystem, especially to deal with the unexpected challenges caused as a result of COVID-19. With this, I conclude today's panel discussion. On behalf of ET government, I sincerely thank our guest panelists for sharing their knowledge and expertise. I thank Professor Anil D. Sahasrabudhe, Chairman, All India Council for Technical Education, AICTE, Dr. Manju Singh, Joint Secretary, University Grants Commission, UGC, Professor Vijay Kumar Shukla, officiating Vice Chancellor, Banaras Hindu University, Varanasi, Ms. Kirti Seth, CEO, IT, ITES Sector Skill Council, NASCOM, and Mr. Arun Pandey, Higher Education Industry Lead, Microsoft India. Thank you so much.
Thank you everyone for sharing your perspective and all the updates. Now we'll take a short networking break here. Stay connected to your screens and don't forget to share the highlights on social media using the hashtag ETRHES.